ATG family, welcome tonight. It is Tuesday, April 20th. We are streaming into you from Treaty 13, the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Chippewa, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. It's grateful to be on this land, which is meant to be a little chillier tonight. Hopefully the snow does not land in Toronto tomorrow, but that's what they're calling for, April 20th. Who knows? Anything can happen these days. Welcome to From the Director's Chair, where we talk with people who are intersecting with our industry, which is opera and live performance, digital performance, pre-recorded performances. It's kind of all up there right now. And my guest today is John Doyle, who we're going to be talking music, theater, art and performance on TV, the role of the critic, many other wonderful things. I want to give you a little bit of a background on John. And John is the Globe and Mail's television critic. And he's been with the paper since 2000. From 1995 to 2000, he was also the critic for Broadcast Week, which was the Globe's television magazine. He was born in Ireland, and John holds a BA in English Literature and an MA in Anglo-Irish Studies from University College in Dublin. And he came to Canada in 1980, and he pursued a PhD in English at York University. And he made international news in 2004, where he was called less nice names because he wrote a column mocking Fox News as it arrived in Canada, attracting attention of all those wonderful people who kind of wrote really mean things, often abusively to him, based on that critique. The battle between John and Fox News was the subject of international coverage, featured in the New York Times as well. He's won 2 internal Globe and Mail awards for his writing. His book, A Great Feast of Light, Growing Up Irish in the Television Age, was published to acclaim in Canada, 2005. Also writing about soccer, football, depending which way you like to use that term. For the Globe and Mail, he covered the World Cup in 2002 and 2006. He's written extensively about it, again, for The Guardian and the New York Times. His book about soccer, The World is a Ball, The Joy, Madness, and Meaning of Soccer, was a national bestseller in 2010 and long listed for the William Hirsch Irish Sports Book of the Year. He's done a lot. John, welcome.
Hi, Joel. How are you? Thank you for that introduction, which was very nice, very kind of you. When I occasionally do talks or give readings and so on, because of that, I've become a kind of connoisseur of the introduction. You did a nice one. I'm always a little wary of them, especially wary of the introduction that begins, John Doyle was born in Ireland in 19. He entered University College Dublin and I'm wary of it because as a journalist, I know that's the obituary.
Yes. We're not there yet.
No.
Nowhere near it. Thank you for coming on and being a part of this. We're live, so if anyone watching has some questions or comments, please put it in your chat, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook or Twitch or Twitter. And John and I would love to chat about it. I guess as we get into this, how have you been coping during this, what feels like a forever COVID pandemic lockdown?
I am as peachy as the pandemic permits. And I think that goes for a lot of people. When this all began last year, it was not a huge shift for me. I have been working at home for at least a year before that, before the Globe and Mail moved from its old location at Front and Spadina in Toronto to a new building on King Street East. Before it moved, I in that old building, I had an office to myself where I had television, 2 computer screens, all of the bells and whistles I needed to do my job. In the new building, there was no private space for writers, and I wasn't able to do what I do without interfering with other people's work. So I mostly started working from home. So I was used to working at home from already before the pandemic struck. The thing that changed for me was the simple routine, as I'm sure applies to many people. I write 5 days a week for the Globe and Mail, and I usually file about 3:34 in the afternoon. My routine was file to the paper, stand up from the computer or the screen, change and go to the gym, or go to a Pilates class, or go to the park. And when that stopped, the crux of things. There is no gym to go to. There was no Pilates class to go to, and you have to kind of train yourself to take the mental break from your daily work to do that. But as I said, I'm as peachy as the pandemic permits.
Good. That's good to hear. ATG is known for familiar faces that we see. We're a growing company, but there's certain familiar faces that show up to our shows, and you're one of them that's been there for a while now. And I guess, can you bring back the first encounter you had with Against the Grain Theater?
By all means, yes. It was 2013. It was your astonishing production called Figaro's Wedding, which was at the Burroughs Building on Queen Street West. Yep, there's great photos of it.
Yeah.
There was a short piece about it by one of the critics for the Toronto Star, and it was a glowing review. And it was basically, this is only on for so many nights, go see it. The Burroughs Building is around the corner from me. It takes about less than 5 minutes to walk there. So I decided with some other people, let's just go see this. And it was beyond memorable. It was a wonderful performance. It was different. It was immersive. It was, as you know, it was set up like attending a real wedding in a real wedding venue. And it was a joyous, joyful experience. And I think I came out, along with everybody from that performance, with a new appreciation of how opera could be done, what kind of an experience it could be made for the audience. And I distinctly remember coming out of that with some friends. We went around the corner to a bar on Bathurst Street, which had windows onto Bathurst Street. And some of the performers from Figaro's Wedding were walking down the street. And several people among the group I was with were like giddy with excitement at seeing them. And somebody suggested that if they had flowers, they would throw the flowers after them on the street. And that, I think, was the essence of that Figaro's Wedding. It was so joyful and such fun.
Well, that's kind of it. It was, just even seeing pictures, it just brings back great memories of, one, how intimate and close everyone was, which kind of, my goodness, this past year has certainly changed the mentality of sitting so close to strangers and friends. And my goodness, what this has done. But yeah, great memories of that. And thank you for that. And I'm glad you took the chance and stopped by.
Well, so am I, because as you mentioned, I mean, I've stuck with Against the Grain ever since then. I think there's only one production of yours that I've missed, and that's because I was out of the country covering soccer or something.
Right. Fair enough. You probably have one of the most enviable jobs that anyone has, in terms of you actually get paid to watch TV, which, for many of us is a joy and something that we like to do. So how does that, as you move to critiquing television and watching it, what does that mean, for you today, and what's that like?
Well, first of all, a small correction, if I may. I get paid to write about television.
Yes.
I don't get paid to watch it.
That's true.
Although there was a point when I started writing about television for the Globe and Mail where, this is quite a few years ago now, the Globe had a magazine division, and one of the magazines that came out every quarter was devoted to food and drink. And I actually, for about 2 years, was the drinks writer for that magazine, which was basically I got to try out liquor and cocktails and write about that. So for that brief period, yes, people would say this guy gets paid to drink and watch TV for a living.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, the job as a critic is something that I do take seriously.
Yes.
I think the role of the critic is increasingly important in an age in which there was so much information out there, but a good deal of it is biased or it's misinformation. The critic, somebody like me who and my colleagues who work for the Globe and Mail, we're the integrity in all of this. The critic, I think, is represents the voice of the audience. The critic is really the only voice that the audience has. And sometimes when I talk to journalism students who want to write for write about arts and entertainment, who want to be reviewers, I try to remind them that, never think that you are part of it. That if you are a reviewer, a critic, you sit in the audience. You are part of the audience. You are not on the side of the stage offering directions to somebody. You have no power in this, and don't think that you do. You are with the audience, and it's your job to represent the audience. It's your job to guide an audience towards what they might enjoy. It's your job to assess what is happening on behalf of the audience.
That's such an important reminder, and that integrity that you speak of from 25 years, 20 years of doing this, that integrity is so important at a time where it feels like the market is being saturated with more and more content. We need that sort of that guide and that voice, and so it's a wonderful testament that you're still doing it, and that we have that voice.
Well, I enjoy doing it, and I hope that comes out in what I write.
It does, absolutely. So where does your interest in the performing arts, where does that come from?
Oh, well, that's a leading question, but it's not the first time I've been asked that. It's I'm asked, well, I write about television, and I know something about television. I've covered the industry. I've reviewed many shows. I knew a fair bit about the intricacy of making television and getting it to an audience. And yet at the same time, I am known for having a considerable interest in theater, opera, dance, in the performing arts. That goes back to my childhood. The first time I attended a play, I was at a theater performance. I was 4 years old.
Wow.
And this was in a small town in Ireland called Nina in County Tipperary, where I was born and grew up. And I was in that theater at 4 years old because my father was on the stage. My father at that time, he worked for an insurance company, but he devoted most of his free time to amateur theater. And also he was very involved in promoting the Irish language and reviving it. So he was part of two groups that created theater, amateur theater, at that time. And he specialized in plays in the Irish language. And I can tell you that on that occasion, that when I was 4 years old, there were two plays performed, two one-act plays. One was a play in the Irish language called An Fear Siúil, which means the wandering man. And the second was a classic Irish play about rural Ireland in the English language called Spring by T.C. Murray. It was the kind of material that my father was involved with. The group he was part of, who were from this small town, they were actually very good. They won At that time, amateur theatre was a big deal in Ireland. There were many competitions and festivals for amateur theatre, and his group won these competitions many times. So my father ended up spending a week on the stage of the Abbey Theatre in Dublin, the national theatre in Ireland, because of a play that he and his friends had done. So something happened when I was 4 years old at that performance. My mother actually has reminded me many times that at that performance when I was 4 and my dad was on the stage, when the lights went down, I did this. I crossed myself. I thought I was at church. But it was strange. It was just kind of strangely symbolic because it was like
Yeah.
a religious experience for me in a way. And I guess I have worshipped at the altar of theater and performance ever since then.
Some of my favorite memories of theater and opera are traveling to Dublin and traveling to Ireland. I was fortunate enough to work on a production at the Wexford Festival.
Oh, of course, yes.
Which
Great Wexford Festival, yes.
It's just fantastic to sort of be a part of that community, and you certainly feel community there, especially.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is woven into the texture of the culture in Ireland. The Abbey Theatre was a part of the national movement that led to Irish independence, which meant that the Abbey Theatre was the first theatre, publicly funded, state-funded theatre in Europe outside of the Soviet Union.
Wow.
So it is still a state-funded theatre, and it still matters. When I was an undergraduate living in Dublin, you could still, I could, as a student, I could get tickets to the Abbey for about 50 cents. And I went to many first nights at the Abbey Theatre, plays by Brian Friel and others, that were simply available because you could just pay 50 cents and go.
Where did those experiences as a young child in theater, seeing your father up on stage, where did that lead you? How did you get to where you are now from those experiences?
Well, in terms of journalism, I kind of fell into this. The story is quite simple and short. I didn't go to journalism school. I'm not trained to do this stuff in the way that most people are these days. I came to Canada in the 1980s to do a PhD because at that point I thought of myself as a scholar, foolish young man that I was. And while I was here, I was at first I was a foreign student, and this was during the recession of the early 1980s. The regulations changed, and as a foreign student, I wasn't allowed to work outside of the university, which meant that for part of the year, I either had to go back to Ireland, which was a very depressed country at the time, or figure out some way to live. One of the things I figured out I could do perfectly legally was write for a living. I could do journalism. There was no prohibition on writing articles for newspapers and getting a check in the mail. So that's how I began regularly writing, doing journalism, writing about film, television, music. And then that kind of took over. And after freelancing for quite a while, I was hired by the Globe and Mail. So that's the long story short part of it. And I have been very lucky in that in writing for the Globe and Mail, I've never been limited in what I write. I've been the television critic, but I've had the freedom to do many other things too.
And part of that has led to covering football, soccer, and how did that come about? What's the correlation between the two?
Well, that actually happened. I describe it. I wrote a book about my travels around the world writing about soccer, and I described it in there accurately, I think, as an accident of office geography. I would occasionally mention in what I wrote that I was a big soccer fan. I followed the game. I had played the game as a kid, as a teenager. So I would drop references to soccer sometimes into what I wrote. And in terms of the office geography, at that point, the Globe was beginning to launch its online presence. And one of the people who was in charge of that had been the sports editor, his family was originally from Scotland. He knew a lot about soccer, and he and I would sort of accidentally meet up, start talking about soccer. And he figured out that I did actually know something about it. So he made this outlandish proposal to the bosses that instead of sending just a sports reporter to the World Cup, that they send me to just write about it as a fan, as a journalist, as a traveler, as a tourist into this strange world of international soccer. So, yes, to the great credit of the paper, my first official assignment for the sports section was covering the opening game of the World Cup, which was held in Japan and Korea in 2002. My first assignment was the opening game of that World Cup in Seoul, between France, the holders at that time, and Senegal. That was my first byline in sports.
Wow, that's amazing. How that can happen. Soccer and opera.
Well, I always think there are connections between these strands of, how my career, such as it is, has played out. I was always attracted to the spectacle of soccer, especially the big tournaments, the World Cup, the Euro tournaments, which are extraordinary and unique events. Mass crowds in huge stadiums. The movement of the armies of fans between towns and cities during the tournaments, the mass singing in the stadium. This is about spectacle. It is not just about the players on the field. It's about the vista that is presented to you, the sounds that are presented to you. There are a few things that can make sort of, the hair on the back of my head stand up. Sometimes it's at opera and at several against the grain productions. And there have been times in a soccer stadium in some city thousands of miles from home, when I hear people singing and chanting, and the intensity of it and the meaning of it, that is a very particular kind of experience of performance.
That's a great sort of reminder of the live versus sort of watching soccer through the TV, where you get the good angles and all that, but that visceral experience about being together. And I remember how Toronto FC, our Toronto football club, how they in some degree had to learn how to be a proper soccer fan in terms of that singing, which you're talking about, which is a different kind of experience.
Yes, I remember that. That's a very smart thing to bring up. I remember when Toronto FC began, and some of it was entirely organic. That is, groups of fans who had been waiting, all their lives for there to be a professional team in Toronto to support. They knew what to do. They knew that you have songs, you have back and forth chants, and that is part of what propels the team. It's part of the meaning. And yes, I mean, the singing and chanting at Toronto FC games can be extraordinary. And I remember being there at a Toronto FC game where one of the American teams was playing, and I could tell that they were spooked by the back and forth chant of the Toronto FC fans, which was "Qu'est-ce que vous chantez?" asked several times, and then it was back and forth until it got louder and louder, and the mass answer is "Nous chansons le rouge à lait," and it's mad, and it's a wonderful experience, though.
Yeah, and the players would feed off that, as singers feed off that energy that is brought at opera as well, which is why we need to get back there soon. For those who are watching, I'm chatting with Globe and Mail TV critic John Doyle. If you have any questions for John, please put them in the chat in Messenger, and we'll bring those up to Ask John. But what TV are you watching now that you'd recommend?
Oh, no, that again is a leading question.
Yeah, it's a bit of a leading question.
but I'm used to being asked it. We're in a great period of television right now. Television has expanded in terms of the amount of content. Cable and streaming services have increased, enlarged the menu for people. And it's cliche to say that we're living in a golden age of television. Everything's shifted in terms of, for what, want of a better term, is prestige television that matters in a dramatic, sociological, and psychological context. So we've been through just in the last few months, we've been through a strong period. There are 3 shows that actually I recommend right now for people who are living through this extraordinary period where they don't have access to live performance. They're very limited in what they can do outside of their home. So 3 shows. One is called Loudermilk. It's on Amazon Prime Video in Canada. And an extraordinary little gem of a show. Okay. It ran on a fairly small service in the US for several years, and was not available in Canada. It's about a guy who's, to call him dyspeptic would be an understatement. He's a guy who runs a group of recovering addicts. He meets with them every week. He tries to shift them along towards sobriety. It's about his life and the lives of this group of oddballs. Wonderfully written, very clever, droll, at times moving. Made in Vancouver, and apart from the lead actor Ron Livingston, who's American, everyone else in it is Canadian. And you see wonderful turns by really good Canadian actors in it. A lot of readers responded to my recommendation about that with delight, and said, there's about 4 seasons of it, and so it's a great indulgence. Second would be Search Party, which is on Crave in Canada. Okay. It again is a show that only came to us recently. Was running in the States for 2-3 years before it was available here. Bonkers, absolutely, but inventively so. It is about a group of millennials, one of whom becomes obsessed with a friend of theirs disappears. She sets out to solve the mystery of this disappeared young woman, which leads her down a rabbit hole into an extraordinary series of events. It's hilarious. It's meaningful at times, but extraordinarily inventive too. So those 2, and a third that I would recommend heavily is Canadian. Pretty Hard Cases from CBC, which is probably the best thing that CBC has done in many years. It's a cop show with an entirely new perspective on the genre, and still it's a cop/crime show. Wonderful lead actors. It completely rethinks what the genre is. It's funny, it's smart, it's exciting, and you can watch I think 13 episodes of it now on CBC Gem. Thoroughly recommend it. Best thing made in Canada in many years.
Well, there we have it. 3 new picks. If you haven't seen these shows, put them on your list. Being a critic is, I guess, subjective, one could say. But for you, what makes when you're critiquing something, what makes good TV, or what is it about a story that compels you personally?
Well, professionally, I have to always approach it from the perspective of the Globe and Mail and its readers. And that's one thing I think a good critic does, is you get to know your readers. You listen to what they say, you read the emails they send you in response to what you write, whether it's good or bad or dismissive, and you try to learn what their tastes are. And Globe and Mail readers are not the same as readers of other things. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. And then allied with that, trying to know what people's tastes are, I sometimes try to shock them or change their tastes, or say, here's something to surprise you. If you like that, you will like some of this, and some of it will shock and surprise you, but it will bring you joy, and you will enjoy the experience. Good writing in television is the first thing. A clever script, well delivered. I am less drawn to science fiction and fantasy than other critics are. Some of it that has drawn great reviews or big audiences. Sometimes this is where the subjective comes in. Sometimes I think it's just juvenile, and I'm not going to tell the average Globe and Mail reader this is some kind of masterpiece, when it's really just young adult fantasy with gizmos and spectacle and special effects.
Exactly. Yeah. We've had two questions that came in for you right now. One of them is, what Canadian stories do you think would be worth a TV series? Kathy Harris asks this on YouTube.
Oh, that's a large question. I do think that there are examples in Canadian literature, in Canadian writing, in short stories, novels, that have areas there that haven't been mined for television drama. There have been examples done of it, but I think less than there needs to be. Canadian television as an industry is a very strange beast. Often the model is to make something that looks like it has come out of the United States, and then sell it to the United States, sell it to other markets. And that sometimes means a reluctance to deal with inherently a Canadian material. So I would like to see somebody pay more attention to Canadian novels, short stories, plays as material for Canadian TV drama. Great.
Another question for you, which how many hours, this fan is wondering, Bob Johnston, how many hours a day do you spend watching TV? And
I don't actually spend more than the average person does. I couldn't. I mean, it's my job. I select what I'm going to screen carefully for review. It sometimes happens that I watch something and decide this is a waste of time. There's nothing to write about there. But mostly it's about enjoyment. It's about finding things that I will enjoy watching. It's not a chore for me. So there will be a few hours a day that I spend screening, then researching, then writing. But I am not addicted to it all the time. I don't spend all of my time outside of my work watching television. I read, I go to the opera, I go to the theater. So I no more than the average person.
And probably we're all sitting here thinking we probably watch more than you do, and that's kind of
some of you do. I know that.
Yeah, exactly. Another fan is just wondering, thoughts on BoJack Horseman. Have you seen that show?
It's yes, I have, and it's a show I like, and I probably should have written more about it.
Hmm.
I know it's a cult show that a lot of people follow intensely
Hmm.
and admire it for its wit, its satire, its treatment of current events. Um, it's one of those instances where I'm not sure it's perfect for a Globe and Mail reader audience, but a good reminder, thank you, to rethink that.
Nice. And I guess as this relates to opera and the performing arts, we've taken so much content, theater companies, opera companies online, and I've heard that
Yes.
comparison of is theater online simply television, and I guess is there a future in the arts on thinking it on like television or that platform? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's a fascinating question, Joel, and we're living in a really interesting period. Difficult though it may be because of the pandemic. One of the things I'm not an expert on this. I can intuit this, but
Hmm.
if you look at the performing arts and how the performing arts were sort of called to a halt, were just stopped because of the pandemic. Theater suffered very badly.
Mhm.
It's very difficult to transform traditional theater into an online experience. With other areas of the performing arts, like opera, it's been very different. I mean, Against the Grain has benefited enormously from the freedom to create powerful visual works for an online audience.
Mhm.
And some of the other examples, Opera Atelier did an
Mhm.
extraordinary piece late last year that was visually sumptuous and profoundly. It was ecstatic. It was moving. So it's in a way, opera, I think, has been able uh, to up its game and to match the challenge by moving towards an online experience. What happens in the future? I I don't know. I mean, you and Against the Grain had an extraordinary success with Messiah Complex, and brought international attention to the company for that. I'm sure that is not just a great work in itself, but I hope it serves as an example to other companies around the world that of how to use the online experience to work at your very best and do something unusual.
Absolutely, and thank you for that. Yeah, we certainly learned a lot from that. Do you have time for two more questions?
Sure, sure.
Yeah, people are asking. It's great. Do you think Robertson Davies's novels would translate well to the screen? That's Kevin Reeves is asking this. Hello, Kevin.
That's a good. Hi, Kevin. That's a good question. I think it might. Certainly, what is his classic novel, the fifth Robertson Davies classic? Oh, the title of which escapes me now, but I think it might. There's a kind of brittleness and a spareness to Robertson Davies' fiction. His best, certainly, that might, in good hands, work as a television drama. Um, and just on that topic, I mean, some of Atwood's
Mm,
work with The Handmaid's Tale,
yeah.
um, has become an international phenomenon. I don't think anybody saw that novel as a television series initially. There was a film version of it. There was an opera about it. Nobody saw it as a television series, but if you allow people the as Atwood did, allow people the luxury and give them license to expand the work to meet what television can do these days. Yes, I mean it can be done, and who knows, Robertson Davies could be a gold mine for somebody in the future.
The fans have spoken. In fifth business was that.
Fifth business, yes, of
Yes.
course, yes.
Thank you for chiming in, our fans who are watching. This is great. Um, And I guess another question would be, what production would you like to see ATG tackle from our unique perspective? If you were rolling the artistic director dice, what suggestion would you make that we could tackle?
My immediate answer is this, and you might say, no, never. Carmen. Carmen, yes, do Carmen. Bring us all joy and sensuality and dance. And
that's a great one, because it's something I've done the big version. Peter Brooks has done a smaller version, and there's so much in there that can be unpacked and sort of peeled apart and put back together. I think exactly like you said, the sensuality, the underbelly of that violence inside, and sort of tenderness as well, comedy as well. It's a great.
Wouldn't it be the perfect post-pandemic production?
Now you're starting to speak right to it. That's kind of it. That could be one. That's the thing. We love to draw people in with titles they may know, but then completely put it on spin it around and twist it around. So,
well, you and Against the Grain have done so many times, and there have been so many great productions over the years. As I said, I think I've seen so many of them. The Uncle John,
yes,
did at the Great Hall, wonderful. To that I brought friends and recommended to other people, and I think it was a wonderful production. But I think with every production like that, you acquire new friends and supporters.
And it's just such a great reminder of what theater is meant to be. Is not just the self-satisfaction that you get from, but just doing it together, doing it with friends, doing it with family, and the performers on stage. So yeah, thanks for reminding us of those old days, which hopefully aren't too far away.
Well, I hope you can return to them in some way.
Yeah, I think we need it.
We all need that the immersive experience, the music, the song, the dance, all of it. Bring it on, please.
Wonderful. John, this has been a wonderful chat.
My pleasure, Joel.
And we may need to do something like this again with another round of, as everyone's saying, this is the golden age of TV. And so we may need a further check-in just to see what is new and coming up that we need to check out. But yeah, thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, my pleasure, Joel. And I did see that there was on the screen, Best Day calendar.
Yes,
was complimenting the wonderful Best Day. Somebody I have met and whose work I came to know through Against the Grain. So thank you and Best Day for all of that.
Thank you, Best Day. Loving the interview. All right, well, we will check in with you again in the future. But John, thanks for taking the time, and yeah, we'll connect again soon. Be sure to follow John on Twitter, follow his column at the Globe and Mail, and buy a newspaper, check it out online, get a subscription, and support the arts and our writers. For everyone who tuned in, thank you for tuning in to watch this interview. We're doing them. We're trying to do at least once a month now to check in with industry professionals who are addicted by the arts, who are fascinated by the arts. Our next one is next month, Tuesday, May 18th, from the director's chair, Canadian soprano Adrienne Piajonka. You're going to want to tune in to see what her thoughts are on the industry, on what's going on, and to hear from one of Canada's greatest sopranos who's ever sung on the operatic stage. So be sure to come back. I'm Joel Ivany. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.